Well, it's late January 2022, and Canada is still mandating vaccines for air and rail travel, still requiring masks in public spaces, and now requiring truckers to be fully vaccinated, not recognizing naturally conferred immunity from COVID recovery, like Austria, like Germany, and like the United Kingdom. Oh, whoops, never mind. In Canada, however, the policy is still that, despite deaths being under the 1% mark, from the very beginning, don't tell me that's because of vaccination, because that's also true of 2020 before the vaccines were available. The policy is still that the human immune system apparently cannot save, despite data showing that an estimated 40% of COVID infections being completely asymptomatic. Wow, that's great, but don't you dare chalk that up to the human immune system doing what it's done since time immemorial for the estimated 150 to 200,000 years that human beings as we are have existed on this planet. All this while the consensus seems to be that Omicron is going to be far more transmissible, but far less deadly. All this while people are finding it much more difficult to feed their families as opposed to 2019 because of these restrictions and these mandates. Also, there's the little discussed fact that natural immunity is far more effective than vaccine-conferred immunity during the Delta wave. Lockdown, masking, social distancing, forced vaccinations. At what point will this be considered endemic? At what point will this pandemic end? Surely when every single living person has been vaccinated.
And what we really are working to do is pivot the language to make sure that everybody is as up to date with their COVID-19 vaccines as they personally should be based on when they got their last vaccine. That means if you recently got your second dose, you're not eligible for a booster, you're up to date. If you are eligible for a booster and you haven't gotten it, you're not up to date and you need to get your booster in order to be up to date.
No, it doesn't look like it. Apparently, when every single living person has been boosted within the previous 3 to 5 months. Meanwhile, in Florida,
we hear so much about all these things, mandates, restrictions, tearing people down. Today, we lift people up. We provide protections for people. No nurse, no firefighter, no police officer, no trucker, no anybody should lose their job because of these COVID jabs. And that's what we're doing. We're making sure that people have a right to earn a living, people have a right to have protections in their place of employment, and that parents have protections to be able to direct the upbringing of their kids.
Meanwhile, in Tennessee,
we've entered a new season. We have significant tools at our disposal, and it's time for government to get out of the business of public health interventions. COVID-19 is now a managed public health issue in our states, no longer a statewide public health crisis. And therefore, my last COVID-19 executive order will expire tomorrow. Above all else, Tennesseans have embraced the idea of personal responsibility and have allowed us to get in this state from a public health crisis to a managed health issue. We've spent the last year putting in place infrastructure that allowed Tennesseans to get tested, to get a vaccine. We have made adjustments in our healthcare system to allow for the flexibility necessary for the ebbs and flows of this public health crisis and this particular virus. After more than a year of public-led health interventions, we're in a different season. It's time to shift our focus now more toward recovery and not restrictions. There are currently no state-mandated restrictions on businesses in 89 counties that the state has jurisdiction over, and there hasn't been for many months. But last year, during the height of the pandemic, we did provide the Tennessee Pledge as a guide to give businesses direction about ways to operate safely. These guidelines will today be officially retired in order to send a clear message that Tennesseans now know how to manage their own day-to-day operations without a government playbook, even if it was a voluntary one. So whether it's capacity limits or temperature checks or other burdens on operation, it's time for businesses to get back to serving their customers. It's time for celebrations and weddings and conventions and concerts and parades and proms and everything in between to happen without limits on gathering sizes or other arbitrary restrictions for those events. And while I never instituted a statewide mask mandate in the state, we should address the remaining mask mandates that are in place at the local level. So effective tomorrow, no local governments in the 89 counties that fall under our jurisdiction will have the authority to issue a mask mandate.
Meanwhile, in South Dakota,
I am honored to stand before you today as the governor of a state that is proudly leading the nation. We are leading with a talented workforce. We are leading with growing our businesses. We are leading with strong schools. We are leading with freedom, limited government, fiscal responsibility, and a commitment to defending the values that have made our country great. I am proud to report that the state of South Dakota is stronger than it has been in our 133 years. That did not happen because of what government did. That happened because of what government did not do, and it is because of our people. 2 years ago, we made a decision in the middle of a global threat. We chose not to compromise our values. We kept businesses, schools, and churches open. We did not decide who was essential and who wasn't, and we chose freedom and personal responsibility over mandates and lockdowns. We took steps to safeguard the public health, but we also trusted people, and we made decisions that were best for them and for their families. We did what was right, and we were attacked for that decision. Today, we are thriving because we upheld our principles. Our economy is strong. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country. From July 2020 to July 2021, South Dakota's population grew 9 times faster than the national average. And the reason why is no secret. People want to live somewhere that respects them, that respects their freedoms.
no mask mandates, no vaccine mandate, no lockdowns, no restrictions. Why exactly is it that these places can have no mandates and no restrictions? And why haven't they had massive deaths? Why aren't we hearing about this pandemic ravaging these populations? Why is it that these people can go on living their lives as normal, while we up here in Canada, the true north strong and free, so we've been told, we up here can only seemingly increasingly exist at the pleasure of Theresa Tam and Justin Trudeau?
I think the public has to know this is one of the worst case scenarios in terms of an infectious disease outbreak, and that their cooperation is sought. If there are people who are non-compliant, there are definitely laws and public health powers that can quarantine people in mandatory settings. It's potential you could track people, put bracelets on their arms, have police and other setups to ensure quarantine is undertaken. It is better to be preemptive and precautionary and take the heat of people thinking you might be overreactionary, get ahead of the curve, and then think about whether you've overreacted later. But it's such a serious situation that I think decisive early action is the key.
Police checkpoints are set up on all the bridges, and everyone leaving the city is required to show proof of vaccination. Those who refuse to cooperate are taken away to temporary detention centers.
Oh, looks like she's been wanting to do this for over a decade now.
As with climate change, those who have the least are impacted the most. To eliminate this virus anywhere, we need to eliminate it everywhere. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
Oh, that's what's going on. Okay.